So as John mentioned, Ben and I make up the core team of the Adhesion project. Ben has actually been with the project for about a year now and took over as core maintainer about 6 months ago, and has actually had quite a bit to do with the announcement we're going to be making later today during the presentation as well. So a little bit about what Adhesion is. Adhesion is really a framework around Asterisk to allow you to do all of your development in number one, in Ruby, but also in a domain-specific language that makes it very easy for people to come and start developing telephony applications. So if you look at the way Asterisk is today, how many people are actually doing Asterisk dial plan extensions.conf stuff in here? A fair number. What a lot of people don't realize is it's a bit of a misnomer, the .conf extension, because extensions is really a programming language. You've got the ability to loop and go-tos and set variables and all of these things. So people are really learning a new programming language. And what Adhesion tries to do is say, instead of taking the time to do that, really just make a call over AGI, fast AGI, and then program in a full programming language. But at the same time, make it very easy to do, so you still have the similar concepts of doing an answer and a dial, and you don't actually have to know Ruby in detail if you don't want to. So Adhesion, the name actually came from the idea of adhesion you could hear, right? So where Adhesion really excels is when you're trying to integrate other systems into your Asterisk or your telephony platform. So if you want SQL databases, NoSQL databases, LDAP, XMPP, HTTP, etc., all of that becomes very easy to do because now you're in a modern web development language and framework to do that. And another key piece is there's really only two full frameworks that work with Asterisk that are out there in terms of supporting full AGI, fast AGI, as well as the manager interface. And that's really Adhesion and Asterisk Java. Most of the other things you see out there are really libraries or thin shims that sit around the different interfaces. So what Adhesion strives to be is a real framework that helps you, develop a full set of applications that use both the synchronous and asynchronous APIs of Adhesion. And then, of course, REST, JSON, YAML, XML. Did we get any more buzzwords up there?
We can find some.
I think we're good. So, extensions.conf is a programming language, but you don't really want to use it as a programming language, is I think what we're trying to say there in reality. You have other alternatives out there. You have the fact that these things are non-standard, and you're having to learn all these APIs and things like this. And once again, what Adhesion's really doing is just taking you, from the telephony world and the modern web development world, smashing them together and really giving you a consistent way to develop your applications. I'm going to hand over to Ben now to go a bit through the architecture, and then we're really going to get into some demos and code and things like that in detail as well. So,
all right. So what I wanted to illustrate on this slide is that to emphasize the point, Adhesion is a framework. As Jason mentioned, it's not just a library. A library provides some simple interfaces to do things with a protocol. What Adhesion does is it actually provides a lot of the guts for what you need to actually manage a server for you. Socket setup, socket cleanup, connecting to the database and maintain those connections, reestablishing them when they fail, an eventing mechanism that lets you capture events coming off the AMI socket and actually interact with them, and then also talking to things like XMPP, Jabber, so you can send instant messages or react to presence that comes from your roster. And the framework provides hooks for all these things. They only take configuration to activate, no code. So just a bit about what Adhesion is. It is completely open source, written in Ruby. It allows you to create multimodal voice applications. So it's not just about voice, but integrating voice with things like REST and XMPP and all the other things that really bring a new view of the voice world. Adhesion provides a way to reuse code. We have a plugin system called components, and these components can be distributed using the Ruby language's native mechanism, Ruby gems. So you can actually do a gem install on a component and then use that functionality right in your dial plan. It does provide a very intuitive language. As Jason was mentioning, you can do things like dial, answer, hang up. You can join conferences. You can add a call to a queue. You can pull a call off of a queue. And these are done without having to go deep into AGI. Really, it's just very simple primitives. Using ORM, Object Relational Mapper, using Active Record, you can integrate Adhesion with existing applications such as Ruby on Rails. In fact, there's a built-in convenience where you tell Adhearsion where your Rails application lives, it automatically loads all the models. And without any additional work, you have immediate access to all of the business logic that you've put into your models. Very convenient way to get up and running quickly with existing applications. And of course, one of the strongest features is the natural use of Ruby. And through JRuby, also Java. You can actually include Java classes. So if you have an existing investment in a lot of custom in-house software in Java, you run Adhearsion and JRuby, and you have access to those classes. A little background on Adhearsion. It was originally written by Jay Phillips. Jay started the project in 2006, and the next year went on a world tour. He hit, I think, just about every conference there is to hit for voice over IP and Ruby. The list is long.
A year and a half, sleeping on couches and just living around the world.
Yeah. At the end of 2008, Jay and Jason formed Adhearsion LLC and brought it to the masses. And this is where Adhearsion really started to take off. There's so six months later, Adhearsion was actually acquired by Voxeo to form Voxeo Labs. And then in June of this year, I took over as the lead maintainer. Jay has kind of moved on to other projects. He's actually working with Pivotal Labs now, very established Ruby on Rails development house. Yep. And then most recently, last month, Jason created Agitate, which is a AGI layer for Tropo, meaning that Adhearsion now has two platforms, Asterisk and Tropo, natively supported. And the big announcement that we want to make today, in October 2010 at Astricon, Adhearsion is going 1.0. This is a big milestone for us. It's been over 2 years since we've been on this API. It's a very stable API, and we're planning to support this for a long time. We've had a lot of real-world deployments. It's mature, and we're happy to announce that it's finally 1.0.
Great.
All right, so let's do code. What I want to walk you through right now is getting started with Adhearsion. We'll show you how to install Adhearsion, how to set up your first application, and just some sort of basics of working with the dial plan. So if you guys are familiar with RVM, I've got a gem set here. I can't see, of course, so I've got to type. Okay, so as with all good Ruby libraries, you install it using gems. So we will install Adhearsion from Ruby gems. It will automatically download it and install it for you. Oh, you know what? I hope my internet connection's still working.
Yeah, we've been having some issues.
Okay, well, I'm going to just use a bit that I prepared previously. So I'm going to cheat and install a copy I have from when I actually rolled the gem a couple hours ago. So we're just going to pretend that the internet's magically downloaded this for us. There is some support for 1.9. We have people using it. There are still a couple errors, or I should say warnings that we need to get rid of because of language changes, but it seems to work.
Yeah, we do testing with, while he's doing that, with the Ruby MRI, JRuby 1.9. Am I missing anything? All the way back, I think, to 1.8.6.
1.8.6, and active support as old as 2.1, in case any of you have really old Rails apps still out there. It does work. Yes, we do support Active Support 3 and Rails 3.
Yeah.
There is, I don't know why this is not working.
Yeah, there's, yeah, no, the network's been having problems today. It could be causing other issues.
I was trying earlier. It wouldn't even bring up the login page. But I've got it installed, so I'll just...
Yeah, in one of your environments.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
So Adhearsion really does install. You can see it there.
Gems work fine.
Gems are fun. You can see the dependencies. We do rely on active support, log4r, and RubyGen. And in case you see this, if you're installing Adhesion for the first time, there is a conflict between RubyGen and Active Support 3. It's a dependency, so you have to manually install RubyGen. That will be fixed as soon as the RubyGen maintainers update to Active Support 3. But for now, you do have to manually install that. JSON is not actually a dependency, but I'm going to use it in this demo, which is why it's here. OK, so we've got Adhesion installed. Let's create our first application. If you're familiar with Rails, this will look sort of familiar. You can see it goes and creates a skeleton framework. And is this big enough? Do I need to make the text larger? Can you see this all right? Yeah, good. OK. So you can see, oops. You can see that we have components directory, which is where you can create reusable pieces. And then actually those components can, if you do decide to create a component, it can later be packaged as a gem and redistributed. But for development purposes, it'll load components from the current directory. There's the configuration, which I'll get to in just a minute. And then you have the two most important files, dialplan.rb and events.rb. Let's first, though, start with configuring Adhesion. Actually, let's do this. All right. I can't actually see that from here. The important thing to look for, keep in mind that, I don't know if any of you are familiar with AGI, but starting with Asterisk 1.6, the delimiter for arguments changed. If you remember way back to Asterisk 1.2, you could actually use a pipe to delimit arguments. Well, they finally got around to changing that in AGI as of 1.6. So one thing you need to always check when you install Adhesion is that you're using the right argument delimiter. Change it to a pipe or a comma as your installation needs. We looked for ways to auto-detect that, and there's really no reliable way. Part of the reason is in Asterisk 1.6, there's a configuration setting. CloudVox actually has this on for compatibility. You can change the argument delimiter back to a pipe. Just something to be aware of.
And the other thing is it does support 1.8. There's already people running in production on 1.8 as well. It's just that 1.6 and 1.8 are the same in terms of the delimiter. So.
You send some kind of set which delimits with the pipe and then read it back and see whether there's a pipe in there or whether it's gone.
Yeah, you could just do like a little test ping. Yeah, that's a good idea.
The other thing you may want to do, and this is optional, but it is recommended, is to enable the Asterisk Manager interface connection. Now, this is a pretty cool feature because what it'll do is, in addition to letting you do things like originate calls or send Asterisk instructions to do things, it will also allow you to consume the events. And the events are really powerful. I'll get to a demonstration of them in a minute. But what they do is they let you detect things like when a channel is created, when a channel is connected, when DTMF is pressed by the user on any of the channels, when a caller goes into a queue, when it comes out of a queue. Just about anything that happens in Asterisk, an event is fired. And then you can react to that with an Adhesion. So I'm going.
You're saying that this is not on Adhesion, but it's happening on Asterisk, and Adhesion is being notified about it?
That's right. In fact, I'll show you the events coming off Asterisk in just a second. So I'm going to change this to my. OK. Once you've got your settings in place. Oh, and let me just, while we're here, we'll go through the other settings here. So Ruby has a distributed object model called DRB. You can use it to integrate different processes, even on different boxes. Adhesion does support that. If you want to enable that, you can uncomment that line and then actually access Adhesion's objects remotely. Down here, you can see this is the integration with Rails. You can point it at your Rails application. It'll automatically load the models that you have defined. Down here, we have connections for Active Record. If you're not using this, the Active Record pieces here are if you're not using Rails. You don't want to enable them both, one or the other. But you can use Active Record without Rails itself by uncommenting and configuring these as appropriate.
And there's nothing keeping you from using something like Data Mapper. It's just that we've done Active Record by default.
Yeah, we're hoping to get components actually for other ORM styles and other libraries, but this is what we support out of the box. And of course, XMP.
Are there plans to provide Adhesion as a Rails engine?
No. No, it's really a standalone application. We don't want to be dependent on Rails. It really needs to run entirely independently. We will obviously use the models, but we don't want to be dependent on that project.